When police raided a protester encampment at Columbia University last week, the students at Yale were ready, tracking every minute of the chaos that followed with their smartphones on social media. If students at the New York City Ivy League school were going to risk arrest, they would too. By the next morning, Yale demonstrators had pitched their own tents. On a Zoom call that day, more than 200 students from dozens of other colleges across the country were strategizing on how they could replicate Columbia's protest. We talked about what it was like to recruit people and join, and what it meant to stand in solidarity together, and what it would look like if these camps started popping up everywhere, said Solfaskanas, 21-year-old junior at Barnard College who was arrested at Columbia. What followed was the start of what historians now call one of the most consequential student uprisings the nation has seen in recent times. Though officials hope the tensions calm when classes end next month, the protests have become a crisis for college administrators struggling to rein in demonstrations while juggling competing demands to combat anti-Semitic rhetoric and permit students' right to free speech. "I think the ivory tower stands on shaky ground," said Stephen Mintz, a professor of history at the University of Texas at Austin. "Its foundations are far more fragile and vulnerable than it might seem, and there are big cracks in the facade." Though the demonstrations have made headlines across the globe in recent days, they are the culmination of months of activism and earlier tensions on campus. Protests began on college campuses within days of the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7. Students then started organizing around a particular demand: university divestment from weapons manufacturers. Their activism steadily escalated throughout the spring, as students employed increasingly aggressive tactics after saying they got little or no response from administrators. The growing uprising has been supercharged by social media and smartphones, which allowed students to quickly communicate with one another and replicate tactics in ways unthinkable in earlier university movements. Historians like David Courtwright, a professor emeritus at the University of Notre Dame, say the demonstrations already compare to several other large protest movements over the last 60 years, including the campaign to end apartheid in South Africa and the 2011 Occupy Wall Street demonstrations over corporate greed. But unlike the protests of decades past, college administrators have fewer tools at their disposal to assuage demonstrator demands. Experts say student requests for divestment are not only impractical but also are likely to yield little if any real benefit. More broadly, the students could face a challenge in trying to build alliances. Some would-be demonstrators have been deterred by tactics and chants some view as anti-Semitic. Dr. Martin Luther King used to talk about creative tension where surface calm gets disturbed and the powers that be have to pay attention, said Courtwright, who is also a visiting scholar at Cornell University this year. But in terms of what counts as effectiveness, one of the cardinal rules is to build a broad coalition and don't alienate potential supporters. You don't come up with a slogan that turns away potential allies.